Yeah, recording is starting. So the first one is please sign in and add your name to the attendance list, which is behind that link here, but you can also use the QR code. And you can, of course, use the Zoom chat that we are recording for any comments or questions. And the session is recorded. I said that already. So let's start. So the objective of that meeting is to discuss and exchange the activities others did around data discovery. And we want to brainstorm what we could do in the next day. So last year, for example, we thought about using AI for data discovery, and similar things could be planned for future group activities. So this meeting is not about something new, it's about planning and recap of what we have done before. So the agenda will be, the introduction is about 5 minutes. And then we have, and which I'm doing at the moment, then we have the introduction to the session, which is done by myself and Brigitte. And after that, we will have a 60 minutes discussion about those 4 questions you see here. What are the data discovery challenges organizations, repository, catalog researchers facing? So your problems. What data discovery activities have been carried out? So what have you done? Did participants already apply the 10 principles that we have published last year on their own repo or catalog? Where did you see the most matches, and what was easy to implement for you? And what activities and topics could we do in this year and next year? And after that, we have a short wrap up. So the introduction to the group for all the newcomers which don't know what we are doing is what's data discovery? So actually, data discovery is mostly about the F in the FAIR data principles. So data should be findable. And for that to be possible, the most important thing is that metadata, for example, is registered somewhere in a repository and also in a PID infrastructure, and it should be indexed in a searchable resource, which could be data catalog, dataset search, or whatever, or even a standard search engine out there. So that's motivation, and we want to improve that experience for the end user. And for that, there are several participants in that ecosystem which can help in improving that. Of course, there's the user which wants to search for the data. These are the persons who we want to help with doing that. Then there's a data discovery service. This service needs to install the search engine and so on. So the data can be searched. It's findable, and there are some recommendations needed to make that easy and possible for the end user. Then there is a data catalog which contains the metadata records, and there's a data provider and the curators which are collecting the data, putting together metadata, and publish that in the system. The charter of the Data Discovery Paradigms Interest Group is the objectives, as you have heard before, is that we want to provide a forum where the representatives across the spectrum of stakeholders seen before can explore shared issues on how to improve that data discovery. And we want to produce actionable recommendations for the data producers, data repository seekers, and data discovery service providers. So the progress about the group is the kickoff of the interest group was in 2016. And at the beginning, there were 4 task forces initiated. That was around P8, P9. One was guidelines for making data findable. Then collecting use cases prototyping tools and test collections. So actually to test out if discovery works with common search engines and so on. So the idea was to find some test collections of data sets where you can try out your software. Metadata enrichment was another task force, and the last one was about relevancy ranking, how to score the data sets when they are returned after search. In the P9, after that, we discussed the task force outputs, and then 3 supporting outputs were endorsed. You see the citations here. So the first one was 11 quick tips for finding research data, helping users to find data. Then we had data discovery paradigms, user requirements, and recommendations for data repositories. So that was for the part of the data repositories. And a survey, we also published a survey about current practices in data search services. So the task forces were completed in P11, and then we had new ones about metadata enrichment for discovery, data discovery, and on granularity. That's another issue because the granularity also has a large impact on discovery of data, because if they are too fine-grained, it's very, very hard to have an overview. And the other one was about using schema.org for research data discovery. From that, in P13 and P14, we spun off the research metadata schemas working group. And is this about the group? The session is scheduled in breakout 5? Is this for that meeting, or is it a relic? Because I didn't find it.
That work has closed. Yeah, finished.
Yeah, it has cleansed because this the sentence here looks like strange. Okay, user study of data discovery and data granularity task force proceeded in P15 and P16. And then we have the data granularity working group, which was endorsed in P17. And the first group session of the plenary was there. So data granularity is one of the main issues with data discovery. So there should be some recommendations. So all the data centers has reasonable granularity that supports data discovery. And then in P18, P19, we started a discussion on some overall document, 10 simple rules for everybody. That means data providers, repositories, and data and users. And we started to have a group output in P21 and P22, which is the 10 principles. So we renamed it a little bit to improve data discoverability. We will show, Brigitte will show that after I finish here with the progress. And then in P23 last year, we had a plenary session about applying AI in data discovery, which was not yet in the 10 principles, rules covered at all. So this is still an interesting task, how to improve the data discovery. Yeah, and now I'm coming back here. I hope you have signed in already for the session. And now I hand over to Brigitte for the data discovery. Are there any questions about the group schedule, the history? No. Okay.
Okay. The slides is linked in the collaborative notes.
Yeah. So the slide should be linked in the collaborative notes.
Yeah, can do. Yeah, okay. Can you do that?
Okay, so let's talk about the trend principles. So the idea of the 10 principles is to have 10 guiding principles. If you have a data search engine, what should you do to make it a better data search engine? And principle number 1 is, of course, that you should know your user. We have a couple of recommendations in this regard. You can do surveys, you can do interviews, you can do interaction log analysis, A/B testing, or you could just observe them, or just talk to them. But what we really recommend is to have some sort of structured user interactions, because from the people we talk to that do have that, they really benefited from it in multiple different ways, not only to improve the user interface, but also to go like, oh, okay, so you need the metadata there and not there, and so on. So I can highly recommend doing this. We are doing that quite extensively, actually. And then my personal pet peeve, the improved presence in the web search. This is something where I often think like, okay, this is so much, there's so much effort making the data available and having beautiful metadata, but then you can't find it in a I don't know, Google search, or and that also means that you can't find it with AI, which is increasingly a problem as well. What can you do about that? And there's also 6 recommendations. Number 1 is that you should give users a chance to find the repository on its own merit. That basically means that you try to find a domain that has a good page rank, that you have a repository that is described in a way that people actually know what to expect inside of the repository, that you put your metadata into re3 data so people can find you in this way. And then also make sure that the content is indexed. This is actually something which I learned the hard way, is that we had so many data sets that not actually all of them were in the Google index, because Google thought like, okay, there are so many similar pages, you can't be serious. So this is a bit of an issue. Most of the time, it's actually pretty easy to fix. So just because big search engine doesn't index you doesn't necessarily mean that they will not index you. There are sometimes problems, but you can usually get around that by some thinking about the problem and trying to oftentimes you even get something like a bug report and then just working through the bugs. The third recommendation is to apply some low-level SEO measures to improve ranking. So in case, oh, you're too quick. So in case you heard about SEO, people usually, it kind of has a bad reputation because this is how people do click farms and, have these baity titles and all that. But, having a data set name that is at least a little bit clickbaity is not the worst thing in the world. We have a lot of problems in our repository with data sets that are called family, which is an awful name because nobody can find that. And to guide people a little bit in like, okay, how should I name my things? How should I present these things? Sometimes it's really like the little things that make a difference. Also, please do not name your data set in the exact same way, like, I don't know, a Korean boy band or something. So Google before you name it. So these sorts of really low-level SEO measures can go a long way to make you to just be aware of that these things exist, and to be aware of the page rank, and to have some sort of strategy on how you generate inlinks, for example, from Wikipedia. The fourth one is almost like a subset of this. You should include keywords. Again, talking about my own system, we were looking at it and there were some weird things in the queries, and then we realized because we had a very nice data set icon, we actually never say on the website of the data set that these are data sets. And of course, that leads to the search engine to the wrong conclusion that there is no data set here. That was a bit of a problem, but we fixed that. I'm really talking about these sorts of things. Don't pay thousands of dollars for SEO specialists that tell you these sort of things. It's really easy to figure these sorts of things out once you actually look at your own web page from that particular perspective. Again, embed machine readable metadata. This is where it's get a bit more formal. You have schema.org, but also you have things like fair signposting. This sounds like, what is it doing? Like, why is machine readable metadata in the principle about improving your presence in web search? Well, there is a ripple effect. Once you have schema.org, the general value of your web page just rises because it looks like it's put together well and that you are doing something official, and that just makes the algorithm think that what's going on there is valuable, which is of course exactly what you want the algorithm to think because it's true. And then the 6th point is also a bit indirect, that when you have APIs and when you enable other people to harvest your metadata, it means that they will propagate what you have, and they will produce inlinks, which will in the end also benefit your web page and your web search, and enables people to find your content. Right, let's go on to the next principles, and I promise I will talk less about these. Be present in literature search and in the user research community. When we look at the user studies that have been conducted, it is very, very clear that most people do consult literature when they do data search. It's almost like a 50% thing. So be aware of this. Not everybody just types in the name into a search engine. Most people actually also use literature search. So to enable that, they do need good data citations that actually work and that don't lead to, broken links. You do need to encourage people to actually put these links into their publication. There is in many disciplines this idea that you can just link to the paper. In a way, that's okay. You just, ask people to do 3 more clicks, as long as the link to the data set is then in that paper and the paper is openly available. But also, so that might also work. And then, of course, there's the idea that you can engage your research community proactively. The more papers are written about this, it's almost like a winner takes all sort of thing. The more people have written papers about a data set, the more likely it is that more people download the data set and that they also engage with it positively. So if you want to make your data sets more attractive, hiring a PhD student to work on it goes a very, very long way, if you have the money, of course. Then the next principle is that you should support both disciplinary and interdisciplinary search. Why is that? The way that people search is never like from the repository perspective. People tend to think like, okay, the search starts by people going to our website and typing in whatever they're looking for. But that is actually not accurate. Like people take all kinds of ways through these, by now, very, very large ecosystem of data repositories, data, metadata, harvester, search engines, etc., etc. So being able to be present in these interdisciplinary search engines actually also gives you a lot of visibility and makes your data more easily findable. So first of all, of course, you need to engage intended user communities, but also think about, okay, who could be a user community who maybe at the moment don't really know much about us. One prime example is, for example, some archaeological data that is also, for example, suddenly interesting to the biodiversity community. So how do you kind of connect these sorts of communities? And then we have the increase the disciplinary diversity in data set beholding. This is exactly what we were talking about earlier. Like you can have just because a data set was produced with a certain discipline in mind doesn't actually mean that they are the only ones who can benefit from it. For example, a lot of textual data is super interesting to all computer scientists because we now need all the textual data that we get to, build these really, really large language models. And so we are basically going through everything just to find a large textual corpora. And so yeah, it's a lot of scientists are interested in your data, probably more than you know. Then improve metadata interoperability and reusability. Again, this is, we're going back to the FAIR principles and the I and the R in this case. And then support diverse data search terms. And this also goes back to sometimes really putting down stuff that are really, really simple, like what even is this? Is this text? Okay, if it's text, you should say it's text. And it might not make as much sense. For example, if you're a linguist, of course the data is text, because what else would it be? Okay, it could also be sound and video. For other disciplines, this might not be as obvious, right? So sometimes, stating the obvious goes a long way. Provide multiple data search entries. There's also, I think this was one of the ideas that one person had, that they basically have two different entries for the same data set, depending on how you look at it. If you look at it from an archaeology perspective, then time frame and all this is very, very important. But if you look at it from a biodiversity perspective, what is more important is like what kind of species are in there, etc. So having these two different views on the same data set is very helpful. And then, of course, provide support to machine readable metadata, which is a bit of a running theme in this 10 principles. Principle 5, support data search from broad terms to narrow terms. Again, something that we kind of already mentioned is that sometimes we forget the broad terms because they're so obvious to us, but sometimes we also forget the narrow terms. And a lot of people, when you look at how query logs work, actually are very specific in their queries, and this also should be supported. And of course, there's all kinds of other data search functionality that you can support. Having a good taxonomy goes a long way, but then also explaining this taxonomy to other people is something. Being able to search by source, by discipline, etc. Like one of the things that sometimes really difficult if you go, for example, into DataCite and you try to look even for very basic metadata such as subject, you will find that a lot of data sets have no subject information, and that is totally insane, because almost all of that should have subject classification. It's just that no one bothered to put the actual name of the subject in there. So that sort of thing, like, but if your data have that, then you should also provide that in the UI. Okay, next slide, please, Uwe. Thank you. Right, so manage duplication metadata records. This is something that takes, I think, most of the repositories when you come to a certain size. It's of course especially virulent if you harvest from a lot of sources. So recommendation number 1 is that you find out why are there duplications, and the idea then is to link via DOI. That's our second recommendation, and try to stick to the same DOI, because there are a lot of data sets out there by now that have more than one DOI, so this can be really, really complicated. Then another thing that is particularly useful, especially for everybody who harvests a lot, is to have a versioning. Just because you harvest once and it has still the same DOI doesn't necessarily mean that they have the exact same metadata. So things do change, and you need to keep ahead of that. And then there is a lot of technology to identify and manage duplicates, just by, for example, looking at the metadata. Is it exactly the same title? Is it the same authors, etc. And so this is something that works, and there are some people who have been working on that extensively and building this sort of technology. And so if there's a problem that you have, then it might be a good idea to join that community and get some feedback on that. Then principle number 7, provide and link metadata on different granularity levels. I had to laugh when Uwe was talking about the granularity group earlier, because I was also co-chair with that, and we do have the outputs now. So if you're interested, they should be on the website. If you can't find them, just drop me an email. So what does that mean? So a data set is, up until now, we basically pretended that a data set is a thing, and basically like a book, and you can look at it from the outside, and then it tells you like a title and authors and all these other things. But that is not actually how data sets work. I mean, this is the big difference, I think, between data sets and books, right? Because sometimes the library doesn't the library metaphor doesn't quite work. So what this means is that the data set, for example, if you have a survey, for some people, it doesn't really matter that you did the survey and what the overall purpose of the survey was. For some people, it just mattered that you asked one specific question, right? And this is and supporting this is really, really important to the people who are looking for that particular question inside this data. And I'm just talking about social science because this is what I'm most familiar with, but this is actually something that is true for almost all the data sets. If you have climate change, then also sometimes people are just looking for very small thing. Do you have information about precipitation? Do you have information about temperature? These sorts of things. In many, like almost always, when a researcher wants to engage with a data set, they are not actually interested in all the data, all the information that is included in the data set. They are mostly interested in one part, and sometimes it's a really, really small part. So being able to structure the metadata that you can link to resources on different granularity levels is super important. For that, first of all, so when they read a paper and someone talks about this data set, and then they download it and it's 5 terabytes, they go like, what? How is that even connected to the paper that I just read? So that's one aspect of it. And the other one is that if you have data search interface on your repository web page, be allowing the users to have a glimpse inside is really goes a long way for them to be able to answer their research questions or to decide whether or not this is relevant, because otherwise they have to download a lot of data sets. And what's the point of having a search engine if you cannot answer the most basic question about it, is like, is this relevant or not? So what brings us to the next principle: consider users' metadata needs from the user's perspective. This goes back a bit to number one, know your users. But the thing is that most people, when they talk about metadata, they come from the library work, which is of course the most the most obvious analogy, and has a lot of technology support and everything. So it is a good approximation. So it's not wrong to do that. But there are some slight tweaks that you might want to introduce, no? By really looking at how users are engaging with the metadata, what kind of information they need to make these judgments. Like, are we like what's going on? Oh, okay. So I need to click that away. Sorry. And so the question is, how do you do that? And there you have to find some sort of balance between the generalist repository and the disciplinary repository, because the advantage of the disciplinary repository is that a lot of things are boiled on already, right? So you don't have to bother the users with stuff that is definitely not interesting to them. But the nice thing about the generalist repository is that it does have this a serendipity thing, where sometimes you stumble upon a data set that you didn't know existed, because inside your discipline, one example again from social science is, you have social scientists, and then they stumble over geodata. And usually social scientists tend to work with surveys, but having a look at geodata also makes lots of sense for certain research questions. So the question is how do you balance between those two? And that really requires that you have a look at what the users what their story is. And yeah, and then another thing is that if you have the users involved with metadata enrichment and to improve the metadata quality, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to crowdsource metadata creation, because that would be a bit much, although that's definitely a possibility, but I can't recall anyone actually doing that. But what this means is that you have to do the metadata enrichment not for its own sake, but with user requirements in mind. And of course, you can always use latest AI technology to enrich metadata. But again, just adding metadata for the sake of it is not helping your users. It should be very focused. Uwe, thank you. And there's 2 more to go. Which brings us to the next principle, which is metadata quality. You have to select a schema and a vocabulary, either a standard vocabulary or something from the community, or if there's really nothing that fits, you can also try to adapt your own requirements, and then enable the description of data properties that your users need. So again, don't just categorize things in the way that you think they should be categorized, but also try to think about, like, from a user perspective, when they are looking for this data, what are the categories that are actually helpful for them in this way. Then the metadata record should be accurate to reflect the data set, and tries to be as complete as the schema allows. Not only on your own web page, but also in the metadata that you provide automatically. We did this analysis of what people provide on their own web pages, what they provide via ORE PM8, and what they provide to DataCite, and it gets thinner and thinner and thinner. There is some benefit to actually push all your metadata out, even if that means misusing fields, because for the most part, most of the search engines right now, they don't really look at the fields that much anyway. It's more like there is textual information that describes this data set, we're going to use it. It doesn't really matter in which field it is. So if you have, like, for example, in chemistry, they said like, oh, we really need this field, and they think, okay, just put it into, like, if everything fails, just put it in the description, right? So try to map that as thoroughly as you can. The other thing is that there are already a lot of validation tools to detect syntax errors, because syntax errors, for a human, you basically don't see them. But one of the things that we also learned is that a lot of people think they have schema.org, but actually they don't, because they missed some brackets. And so what they have is actually not even valid XML. And that is, I think, that is so close to being really good that you should really just run it through one of the validation tools to make sure you have that correctly. Then there is now a whole slew of tools that allow you to evaluate the fairness of the metadata, which can also give you some hints on where you might want to improve. It has led to a lot more people to put, for example, subject information in there, because they feel like, oh, if we don't do that, we get lower FAIR scores on the Fuji tool. And although we know that this is a social science repository, maybe we should just say so. And that actually goes a long way. So this is, I think, already has been a force for more metadata quality. And of course, you can always apply machine learning for metadata extraction. Again, the new AI tools that exist are really helpful in that. And last but not least, linked data. please have a PID on your metadata so that your data can be sufficiently linked by other people. And then also, if you yourself are referencing something else, please also use the PID so people actually know what you mean. And that not only, of course, refers to the URIs of data or the PIDs of data, but also for publications, for persons, right? You can always say, if you have an author, why does the author not have an ORCID? If you have an organization, why does the organization not have an ROR? So there's a lot more PIDs out there than people typically think. And that concludes my overview of the 10 principles. Are there any questions on that particular topic? I see none, and so I give back the baton to Ove.
Yeah. Yes, just the impact statement. We have a question.
We do have a question. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Hi.
hello, Josef here from Slovenia. My question is this more oriented to end users, to researchers, or to repositories? For my researcher point of view, it would be when you deposit to write the repository, it should go by itself, spreading the news. So, thank you.
Yeah, so we have like double inputs. We have one input output that was written a lot earlier, which was directed at the user, which basically just said like, okay, what can you do to make you better? What can you do to look for data? And sorry. So in the document, we have 3 roles that we define, and we give recommendations for all of these 3 roles.
Yeah.
And yes, we talk a lot about what the repositories can do, but a lot of these things actually also are relevant to researchers that want to submit research data. For example, you have control over how you name your data set. So that's already something that you can influence and that you can do better. You can choose what kind of repository you deposit in. You can choose what you do. So I have actually like a slide set just geared at researchers and giving them tips on how to improve the visibility of their individual data sets. So if you're interested, I can just send you the slide set that is a bit more condensed, and you don't have to pick and choose what is relevant to you.
What decision tree or something?
It boils down to basically 5 things, like write papers about your own data sets, for example.
Yeah, put it into the notes link.
Yeah, I can do that, but it's very how should I say it? It's for for relaxation. Okay, then any more questions? All right, then now I'm giving back to Uwe.
Yeah. So here, here's just the impact statement when we published those 10 principles. These are the main important facts about it. So this is part of our release. So I think the questions and comments we already asked for. So the session notes are interesting now for you. So everybody should now start and open the session notes on the laptop, because in our next part we will head over to a group discussion. And at the moment, I think we have how many? 21 people. So should we use breakout rooms or not, Mingfang? What do you think?
We can stay in this room if, or you want to break out into 2. That's fine. Yeah, we can.
I think one is fine.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let's So
Yeah,
let's don't use breakout rooms. Okay. So we want to have some discussion. Okay, we don't have 65 minutes anymore because Brigitte took twice as long.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all fine, but we have a great overview. So we are now focusing on getting your experience. So you have heard about the 10 principles already, and now we want to know from you what were your challenges that you were facing in your organization or repository or research institution. What were your problems? So it would be good to write that down into the document. Or Mingfan, you can also start, and the stage is open. The stage is open for the discussion. Starting, what are your discovery challenges that you were facing?
could you switch to the collaborative notes?
Yes, of course. Wait a minute.
Yeah, the
Oh, that was too large.
question section. Yeah, too large.
Yeah, no, it's slow somehow.
Yeah.
Somehow slow. I have to wait a little bit. Somehow it has to do with the screen sharing. Stop, Google, stop.
Maybe try to close that tab, reopen it.
Yeah, I will close it. But it's starting to get, no, I have the same problem. It has to do with the screen sharing. So maybe you share your screen. So
Okay.
it looks like because I was losing the scroll wheel, and now it simply uses the scroll wheel minutes after I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's better here? Okay.
You stop sharing.
Yeah. Let me get my setup.
So do you see okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's there.
So first question is, what are discovery challenges your organization, or if you run repository catalog, or you're working with researchers, so what are the data discovery challenges are facing? So now is 46, so we take 5 minutes to write down your challenges, or and you put some, provocative questions for people to discuss. That's great. Okay, 1 minute to go. For those you haven't put in, but you can read what other people have written and add your weight, which topic you want to hear more. Add a plus sign at the end of each dot point. So we will pick ones to for discussion. Okay, we can pass 5 minutes. Thanks for quite a few inputs. Actually, the have a plus sign in the end. If we go to the first one, with this rapid progress of AI, so people ask, do we need metadata or not? You know, metadata costs time to describe a data set. Can AI take this job? Andrew, you put that provocative question. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thank you, Mingfang. So let me give you 2 caveats and some context. So caveat number 1 is that I am not the data discovery expert within my organization. That is Mingfang. So I'm speaking from a position of relative ignorance, shall we say, although I have been worrying about discovery for 20 years now, but Mingfang's the expert, not me. Second caveat is my organization does run a discovery service, Research Data Australia, which harvests metadata using OIR-PMH, very conventional model from a range of repositories around the country. So this question is, if you like, a personal question, not an organizational question. I'm not sure my organization would necessarily agree with this question. However, the context, the reason I'm asking this is that I am increasingly worried about the volume of data and the rate at which the data volumes are growing. And I'm worried that the old ways that we used to do things simply will not scale. And so that was the reason for my question. How do we address the increased volume of data without relying on ultimately every person on the planet being a metadata steward and expert? Because that to me looks like it's where the trend lines are going, and that is clearly not sustainable. So that was why my question argued for a focus on what it is we're trying to do, help people find data, rather than getting stuck in how we've done it in the past.
Excellent question.
I could say something.
Lawrence, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, please, if you want to answer first, go ahead, Brigitte, no problem. I have just a comment.
I just wanted to mention that there is a reason why we added use AI to do metadata a lot. Sometimes you have no chance if you don't have the metadata. If you don't know the author of something, you don't know it because it's not in there. But especially I've now been working on code as research data, and there's so much meta information about the code that is actually in the code documented, that asking people to copy and paste that, it seems like, why are we even asking them? And that is where we're now, and especially with the new LLMs, it's so easy to just extract that stuff out. And the more you can do that, what we're doing right now is we work on a tool that basically, when you have the metadata form, you have something like an autocomplete, like, okay, judging from your repository that you sent us, we would suggest the following description, we would suggest the following this, the following that. But because at the end of the day, the AI is sometimes really stupid and doesn't see the obvious stuff. And so having some sort of human in the loop is still helpful. But yeah, I kind of agree. Like the more we try to move away from manual inputting data, metadata, the better. And now,
Thank you.
Yeah, but actually we also need for the AI to work correctly, we need a lot of already correctly annotated metadata, data sets with metadata. This was also some discussion in the yesterday AI meeting, which is a problem. So in the future, we may need less metadata because new data sets could be automatically fed with metadata, or at least parts of it could be done. But at the beginning, we really need a lot of good annotated data sets to train our AI to do that. That's one thing that we should not forget, and especially the use of persistent identifiers is really useful for the AI, because then it can really link those data sets together, figure out. So, for example, one thing is that was an idea. If somebody is coming to Pangea, submitting a new data set, we can use our own systems to search for similar data sets and then already suggest the metadata, so the user does not need to fill it out completely or something like that. So it's not only AI doing that. There are other possibilities that can be used for improvements in the metadata. But actually, the metadata should be saved somewhere to have a quick overview and don't need to analyze the data just to figure out. But if that can be automated, it's a good idea.
Lawrence?
Yeah, well, a lot of things have been said, and I wanted to just add something that has already been said. But yeah, we could be helped by AI, and we should dive into it, because there are a lot of things that could be easier in an easier manner done, or a quicker manner done by using this more often in our institutions. But then we need also to have trust. So this is also what Uri has said, and I was also in the same session as he was yesterday. And in order to have trust, we need to, if we need to, get to the information that that is really well described, in order to know where the information comes from.
Yeah, I guess it's progressive to find out what AI can do to fill in those metadata gap. For example, some like subject headings, people had to put that in, but AI can do reasonably job for that. Also, we need evidence, not blindly and put AI in system, but we need evidence, trying to do lots of experiments to show, have good confidence to use AI for some tasks. We are thinking of time. We also have people table some talk points. But the AI has been, we started that conversations from last plenary, but we will continue that in our future monthly meeting for that topic. And if you haven't done any job in this area, please keep in contact with us. Then we will schedule presentation talks accordingly in our monthly meeting. So next one is another the crosswork or a mapping from many schemas to the one repository used. Yeah, as us at ARDC, we run this research data Australia Discovery Portal, and you mentioned earlier, we maintain dozens of crossworks, and those source schemas keep changing and keep improving as well. So how do you keep update of those crossworks? Anyone want to talk about that? Oi?
Yeah, I I just have also one recommendation, which is coming from our data repository Pangea in that case. So often there are many metadata standards, and whenever you're transforming from one to the other, there's a lot of loss in information. Brigitte already told that. At some point when it arrives at data site, nothing is left over anymore for some repositories, because the mapping is very hard. What we figured out is that if you have a community-specific repository, the first thing is develop your own metadata schema, which contains every information that you want to store. In your case, don't really focus too much on on using another metadata schema which is already there, because if you collect all the information in your own metadata schema in the correct place, in the way how you organize it internally, then it's the best source to convert it to other metadata schema. So whatever, you should not go out there and convert one metadata schema to the next and from the next to the other one. And because there's always a lot of loss of information. So if you have a really native metadata schema to your community or your data repository, it's best to use that. Okay, it needs some development, but for the mapping, but it's a better approach than just using predefined mappings from schema.org to whatever data site, because that is not a good idea. You should always convert to both of them from your own schema. That's my recommendation on that.
Thanks, Wei. Laura?
Yes, so it was me writing this this note here, and I totally agree with you. So the point is actually really this: we use our own internal metadata model, of course. The issue here is that you harvest from many different sources that have very different metadata standards that they exposed. Then you translate them into your own model that contains all the fields that are possible. But when you translate out for other people to harvest the aggregated catalog, you have to pick a standard, of course. So one or to support users, and then you will always find gap, because if you harvest from some Dublin core repository, there's so little in there that you can't really translate to anything else that is not Dublin core. So you have these gaps that are very hard to fill, and sometimes you can do this with this metadata enrichment that also Brigitte talked about before. So we do try to do that, of course, but it can be a bit tricky, and maybe taking the responsibility of this enrichment, sometimes it's hard if the provided metadata is so little.
So you are also harvesting other metadata repositories and make a catalog on top of it. So I was expecting that this is if you are a data center. So you also want to import other metadata into your data center. I understand. One recommendation that I also, when you are harvesting other metadata, don't lose the information, as Brigitte said. Put it into a separate field, which is somehow the catch-all field. So the full text search engine can still find the metadata, but so don't throw away anything when mapping it. Just put it into one place, so it can be at least searched. That's something.
Thanks.
So this one, Laura, thanks for that. This dot point. This can lead to the next one. You know, when you output your metadata into some generic ones, for example, schema.org can be the one. Can someone who put that there help me to understand? So when you say in schema.org can be implemented in different ways, do you mean about, what do you mean exactly about a syntax, or Laura? It's you.
Yes, so this is about harvesting again. So of course, it is the schema itself. It can be implemented with different profiles and, of course, different types of string dictionaries and so on. That can be all
Mm.
captured with very detailed harvesting code. But also the way this schema is exposed by different providers varies very much. So sometimes it's in the header of the pages, sometimes it
Yeah.
can be like a file, sometimes it's lazy loading of pages. So there are also different technical implementation of how this schema.org is
Yeah.
exposed. That means you have to support different protocols, different communication interaction. So
Yeah.
it's a level of complexity again.
At least the lazy loading is not allowed by Google. So if a repository is doing that, it wouldn't be working. But yes.
So, Laura,
Yeah.
so there was a working group, research metadata schemas working group that spun off from this interest group. One output of that working group is guidelines for implementing structured metadata in schema.org. So, yeah, so perhaps have a look of that guidelines. Then, if anything, not new use case coming up, you can contact the author of those guidelines. As RDS output, we usually keep updating and revision of that. Thank you. And so next one, lack of metadata at a source result in poor mapping to other standards. So who mentioned that? You want to explain what do you mean here?
Yes, so sorry, it was me again. I was just a bit too. But
Quite a lot.
it is what we discussed before. So this
Okay.
Dublin core example I was
Yeah.
mentioning. So when you have poor metadata, not poor, but limited metadata, let's say at source, it becomes hard to provide as output some, even to follow standards as output.
Okay, so there are also issues about legacy system, does not allow use the new tools and rely on older standards. But how we can do with that, because that connected to end use AI ones, and also problem with improved discovery when users search use misspelling identifiers. Yeah, if you put exactly identifier into the query, if it's identify as a number, then it's hard for search engine to know this is wrong or right. But if you provide descriptive words, then a search engine can help with misspelling. But if you put numbers, then
Yeah, that's something I added here because we have seen that here. So it was not really about the identifiers in the classical URI sense, but it's something like you have a sample which has something like a common identifier which is constructed out of some campaign identifier and then some numbers, and people don't know how to correctly spell that because sometimes there's white space in, there's no white space in if it's a slash or so on. This is also called somehow the product code problem of Amazon search engine, for example, if you're entering an EAN number to find something, so people only know parts of it, but they search for that and then they don't find anything. And in that case, you need to improve a little bit to try to figure out what they are using. And this is really a problem that you will face.
Yep. Okay. I'm conscious of time. We move on to the next question. So the next question is, for the 10 principles Bridget presented earlier, did your organization or whatever the job roles you are holding now applied any of those principles? What are the challenges to if you implement some of those principles? What are the challenges? What are success stories? So yeah, if I can go back to the slides, the 10 principles. Know your user, improve presence in web search, be present in literature search, support both discipline, interdiscipline search, support search from broad term to narrow term, manage duplicates, manage data at a different granular, and what are your users' metadata needs? Some metadata schema is very comprehensive. Where should put the effort to which metadata matters to user when they do discovery? And any effort to improve metadata quality and also enable linked data. What are the challenges? Yeah. There were a few minutes to write down your thoughts. Or anything you haven't applied, but think of you would have a try in future. Okay, we have no more adding to these suggestions inside here. So I pick one, adding terminology with a broad term to dataset. So is that Laura again who put there? So anyone who on table that would like to discuss, how you did that?
So actually, I added that. So
Oh, you did that.
yeah.
So you
So actually, I presented that I think 2 years ago how that worked on our side. No, I think it was in Salzburg. I don't remember. Yeah. So the idea here is if you have terminologies and use that in your metadata by adding broader terms, it makes it much easier for people to find the stuff because you have additional subjects. So if you have a broader term, you can better categorize a data set. So we do that especially with measurement parameters. Or where it's also used for species names, so you can also search for genus and so on. So this is really good, I think.
So, do you distinguish like the metadata as from source, then metadata you enriched that? That's not necessarily from source.
Yeah, we do that. We do that. So actually, what we need is we need the terminologies which were added by our curation staff. They do it when the correct parameters are selected. But actually, adding the broader terms is only done on the indexing side. So it's available for the search engine, but the original users don't need to supply us with that information. The only important thing is to get the terminologies for that. And with the hope of AI can do that at some point, it would be much easier. And we are also working on ideas how to do that. So
yeah, I wondered if this can be automated by AI.
yeah, that's the problem. So actually it can be automated once you have the correct terminologies with the broader terms, but you need to find them and assign them. Yeah.
Thanks. The other one is like a comment. Linking dataset to other research output is very appreciated. So that's usually to see how the dataset is being used. So that's a recommendation that you should cite dataset if you're writing a research paper or report that use a dataset, but can also link to, not research output, input as well. The project need to the collection of that dataset that could be used for information as well. This goes to the pit graph pitland. How do you describe everything and then link them? Okay. So if no more thought or suggestion, we move on to the question 3. What are the data discovery?
We only have 12 minutes anymore, so we should hurry up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So what other data discovery activities have been or carrying out at your organization? What have you tried? What worked or what didn't work out? So obviously the first is to get data into repository. Is there any challenge like if you ask researchers to describe the data and get into repository?
Yeah, sure. They are beginning. They are not just don't know yet why they would like to do it, and yeah, it's first to convince them that open science is beneficial to them, and then to get the data together in this senseful way, and then to publish it are the first steps anyway to make it available and discoverable.
Yeah. Do you use some outreach activities, so you get so you have something like workshops where you ask people to submit their data and so on, and also some training or something like that?
All of it,
All of
yeah,
it, okay.
we are internally public information mailing, educational events, inviting to the educational events that are
Yeah.
organized elsewhere. So just raising awareness, and
Yeah,
then
okay.
when they think, okay, let's do it, then supporting them to classical data steward job.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So we also figured out that something like a workshop is also nice, how to submit data to your repository, because that also helps to reduce the work on the side of the data repository with annotating metadata and so on. If the people are using the correct vocabularies and whatever from the beginning, it's also a good idea, because if there's a huge gap between getting the data and publishing it, then the people also get
Yeah, and this describing those, although metadata of the data set and then depositing it, we have our institutional repository that is harvested to Slovenian aggregator for searchability, and it's supposed to be on European level aggregated to OpenAIRE, and there is there metadata going along? It will be there lost if there will be translated. There are a lot of open questions in this development. This EOSC, if you don't know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you follow the recommendations on our site, there's a lot of parts in it which also make it possible for OpenAIRE to harvest your data sets.
Yeah, sure.
So
it's on the all field, all levels have to be work done so that findability is increased. Yeah, thank you.
So for our repository, we tried ML and AI to tag subject headings. So we still don't have a confidence to apply that to all data set yet. So we withdrew because when we had a UAT and testing, a researcher said why, I was allocated those subject area. I'm not doing research in this area at all. That make me distrust the data you provide to me. So it's a very strong statement. That's probably Laura said earlier, those hallucination can hurt the experience and damage the trust. So as a result, we withdraw that kind of, that functionality. We are still think when we have more confidence or display those AI tagged annotations separate from those provided by user. So
it's not only for the AI, just to edit, it's not only for the AI, also for what you were asking me before, adding broader terms and that stuff, which also causes confusion for some people. So actually what we do on our side, we only use it for our search engine, but we don't display it to the end user, so the people won't see those tags. Only when they search for them, they will magically get the data set they are looking for. that's that somehow. But of course, you should also show a little bit what you're doing. But it's hard because often when you're using AI, wrong terms may be added, and also with the broader terms, it's also not always correct. So it's better to not show it as official metadata, only use it internally to improve discovery. Yeah.
So I will
Okay,
use a
let's
trend
go.
by Google search. I want
Yeah.
to see my search term, in the record you
Yeah,
show me.
that's
But then,
yeah,
anyway.
you won't see it.
So we,
You won't see it in most.
we have only 5 minutes left. So the last question, so we would get your thought or input what you would like this group to carry on and discuss in the next 12 months. The task force, the topic is we talked about, introduced at the beginning. So that is not we invented that, co-chairs invented that. It was, raised by members through a survey. So then we pick ones that mostly voted one to carry forward. So so now is your input. So what kind of topics or task force you would like this group to pursue? This meeting notes will be available even after the plenary. If you have any thoughts, you can just add your suggestions inside to any of those topics. Great. Keep looking for integrating AI in the whole discovery workflow. That's great. And recommendations, how to implement, view similar data sets. Motivate a repository to use the output of this interest group or the 2 working groups from this interest group. Is there any ideas how to, motivate those repository, how we make those output more visible to those repositories? They may not come to RDA.
Let's publish our paper.
People run repositories, they don't read paper.
Yeah, I know.
Also, they want to, more practical or, want to hear properly from peers what they're doing. But any recommendations or for us to do that will be great. We also want to, 10 principles, and for each principle we have recommendation. Actually, if you look at the report, for each recommendation, we have examples, if available, how other people recommend that. So that's good source to look at. But how we can promote that, get that, output widely known for repositories.
Maybe repositories implementing that should expose it on the homepage somehow, and as an idea.
Okay.
If you liked our search, look here.
Yeah, Josie?
Yeah, create the badge that the repository have to have so that it's area compliant.
Yeah, Yeah.
or something, or maybe this Tiger
Tiger, yeah.
project that would push more in this direction, so that it's more aligned somehow. You know, it's policy level have to be a bit pressure to get more aligned with the standards that is developed in the RDI.
Yeah, that's great. Suggestion. Okay, we come to the time, and I stop sharing so I can see you. So thank you for participating and contributing your ideas, suggestions. We will not have a monthly meeting this month due to this plenary. We will resume in May. We will find the speakers around these topics we discussed. So if you can recommend any one who can speak in this monthly forum, please keep in contact with us. With that, have a nice day, and see you in next plenary meetings or monthly meetings. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We need to submit our next plenary till next Tuesday, I think.
What?
We need to submit
No, I heard you. I'm just astonished. Like,
No,
Yeah, no,
it's the
it's next week Tuesday, I think. So the end of IDW.
it's 21st for RDA, 21st of April.
21st for RDA. Okay, so we have a little bit more time. Okay. So
Yeah,
IDV is
that's a
next
little
week.
bit
Okay.
more time. Okay.
An
Okay,
extra
okay,
week.
okay.
If it helps,
One extra week.
get it in on the
Okay.
15th. But
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we should maybe because we were waiting for what the people suggest that we should do the next time, so we could already plan that for the next meeting.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
good. Yeah. I mean, at least if you've got some
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, but do we have a chairs meeting until then? Because I mean,
No,
I
we
have,
don't have. That's a problem, I think.
yeah, we should try. Okay, then
Maybe
between
let's
the
meet next week. Maybe let's meet next week or something like that.
yeah,
That was
I
my
think that's
idea.
the only way to do it.
I'll
Yeah,
leave you to
Mingfang
all.
is already gone.
Yeah. That's actually so my next week is actually pretty full already. Thursday oh no, actually we do have one meeting on the 16th.
Oh, we have it?
Oh, but he says it's not going to take place because of the maybe we can just meet during
Karfreitag.
the slot.
No.
How about that? On Wednesday at 3.
Wednesday, so 14th.
No, 16th of April.
Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong month.
Yeah.
Oh, 16th.
I thought.
Yeah. So when is the submission deadline? 21st.
31st, yes.
21st. Okay. We have the 50 at 3 o'clock RDA data discovery paradigms, but that's a monthly meeting. Okay.
Yeah, but we could just use it to finish up the proposal. I mean,
Okay. Yeah.
we have
Let's do
done
that.
that so often by now that it should be
Okay.
pretty.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was really interesting to see what so the AI thing came up. Can we stop the recording maybe? Außerdem können wir auch Deutsch reden.
Yeah, we can also stop the recording. I can't do that. Or can I do that?
Ich weiß es nicht.
No, I can press the button. Yes.